Bonuses are canceled, that's what he said, right there in the middle of the damn standing ovation. We were still passing around cold pizza and half-warm beer from the break room fridge. Everybody riding high because we just obliterated our Q3 targets. I mean 285% over forecast. Not 20%, not even 50%. 285%. You'd think we cured cancer with a spreadsheet the way that operations floor was glowing. My name's Garrison Wade. I'm 47 years old, and I've been running operations at Wade Industrial Solutions here in Houston for the past 15 years. Before that, I spent 12 years in the Navy handling logistics for carrier groups. So yeah, I know a thing or two about getting things done under pressure. My throat was raw from back-to-back calls closing that Fortune 100 account. My inbox was a murder scene of approved contracts and signed notifications. Even Flynn from procurement cracked a smile. And Flynn hasn't smiled since 2016 when his cat came back from the dead. Then in strolls Preston, khakis tighter than his budget, hair so aggressively gelled I swear it had its own zip code. No hello, no congrats, just that smug frat boy lean he does when he's about to say something monumentally stupid. He claps once. "Let's gather up," he chirps. "Need 5 minutes." We all go quiet. I already felt it in my stomach. The way you feel just before someone says we're pivoting or there's been a restructure. You know, corporate doom music. He stands there all dead eyes and phony humility and says, "You guys crushed it." "No, really, you crushed it. That's why we're canceling Q3 bonuses." The room died. He did that thing where he tries to look philosophical, like he's delivering wisdom passed down by Steve Jobs and Gandhi at brunch. We're raising the bar. This isn't about incentives. This is about culture, excellence. You already proved you can do it. So now try harder. People didn't move, didn't breathe. Paige from marketing blinked like she forgot how. And I saw Brock, bless his middle management heart, open and close his mouth 3 times like a trout trying to pronounce WTF. I didn't say a word. Not yet. Just watched him standing there with that little shark-tooth smile like he just outsmarted a whole room of seasoned professionals. His loafers probably cost more than our department's coffee budget, and he wore them like they gave him authority, like he earned something. I sipped my coffee, burned my tongue, didn't care. Then I smiled just once. Not wide. The kind of smile you give when the wheels have already been turning for weeks, maybe months, and someone just handed you the last bolt to tighten the trap. I stood up, walked over, leaned in like I was going to offer a polite counterpoint, some HR-friendly rebuttal about morale and compensation parity. Instead, I just said, "Conference room. 5 minutes." He blinked, confused. "Bring your laptop," I added, already walking away. Behind me, the room stayed dead silent except for the distinct sound of his ego inflating. I didn't need to yell, didn't need to get angry. Not yet, because this wasn't about bonuses. This was about legacy, power, and Preston. Poor, sweet, nepotism-soaked Preston had no idea what was waiting for him behind that glass door. 6 months earlier, Preston arrived like a champagne cork at a funeral. Loud, unnecessary, and bound to make a mess. The founder, his uncle Shane Blackwell, had just announced he was taking a step back. "Nothing serious, just a minor health issue, stress-related," he said over Zoom while noticeably wheezing into a portable oxygen tank. Then came the kicker. "I'm having my nephew Preston shadow senior leadership while I'm out. Just to observe, learn the ropes, observe." That was the plan. But Preston walked in Monday morning like he'd bought the building, fresh off his Harvard MBA, which he name-dropped roughly every 6 minutes, usually while misquoting Sun Tzu or referencing case studies involving combat startups and blockchain-enhanced farm tools. His first words to me, "So you're the one still using Excel? Cute." That week, my calendar exploded with meeting requests. Half of them titled things like Reimagining Pipeline Synergy and Innovation Jam. He sent me a Slack message asking if I'd align my narrative with the quarterly vibe. I thought it was a prank. I responded with a screenshot of our actual performance dashboard. He replied with a thumbs up and the fire emoji. 3 days later, Brooke, my right hand in ops for 8 years, was transitioned to consulting. 2 days after that, Cody from data was reallocated for talent optimization. By Friday, I was the only person left from the original core team who didn't speak in pitch deck riddles or wear Allbirds with dress pants. He started reshuffling departments like it was a dorm room draft. brought in his fraternity brother Trent as head of talent culture, a man whose only known skill was producing a podcast about bro philosophy called Grindology. That was followed by a parade of LinkedIn influencers in training, brand managers with ring lights in their cubicles, strategy interns who said, "Let's table that," instead of answering questions. One guy named Lance who openly referred to himself as a thought architect. I tried. God help me, I tried. Smiled through the buzzwords, rewrote reports in language that didn't give me hives, took notes during his mindshare briefings, even when they involved drawing emojis on whiteboards. I had one job: keep the team functional, protect the systems we'd spent a decade building, do what veterans in corporate America have always done, hold the damn line while the toddlers play CEO. Then came the pitch, that Fortune 100 deal. I worked on that strategy deck for 2 months straight. Nights, weekends, hell, I outlined half of it on a plane using the back of a SkyMall catalog because my laptop died and the hotel Wi-Fi was a myth. The deal was complex, multi-tiered, required actual math and industry context. I briefed Preston, prepared him with a one-pager and 3 rehearsals. He mostly nodded and asked if we could make the font sexier. He walked into the pitch like he was auditioning for Shark Tank, waving his arms and saying things like agility verticals and cross-pollinated deliverables. I cringed so hard I nearly turned inside out. Somehow, by sheer force of market timing and the fact that my numbers spoke louder than his nonsense, we landed the client. Next morning, company-wide email from Preston. Subject line, victory lap. First sentence, proud to share the success of my Q3 strategy pivot. My name wasn't mentioned once. I stared at the screen so long I started seeing blood vessels in the corners. But I didn't reply, didn't scream, didn't even leak it to internal Slack like I wanted to, because the clause was still sitting in my drawer, a relic from 15 years ago, buried in a legal appendix no one bothered to read, a clause that didn't care about Harvard or titles or nephews with good hair and empty heads. I printed it out, highlighted it, and I waited. Let him build his little empire on borrowed bricks. He thought he was climbing a ladder, but the higher he went, the more brittle the rungs became. And me? I wasn't even climbing anymore. I was building the trap at the top. It was late. The kind of late where the janitor's playlist becomes the only thing keeping you company, and even the printer sounds lonely. I was the last one in the office again. My screen glowed with the quarterly numbers, still fresh off the finance team's final tally. The total revenue line blinked back at me like it knew something. 285%. We hadn't just hit our target. We obliterated it, buried it in the backyard, and built a Whole Foods on top. Every projection, every stretch goal, every padded optimism from marketing, obliterated. The client Preston had pretended to woo. They weren't just on board. They were doubling down with expansion budgets already pending. Our forecast was $2.2 million. Final tally, $6.3 million. My hands hovered over the keyboard, not from fatigue, but from memory. 15 years ago, I signed my hiring agreement in the same office. Back when Shane still made eye contact, still cared about coffee chats and not just exit strategies. That contract was drafted during a different era, before the buzzwords, before the podcast bros, before the company decided culture could be bought with ping pong tables and beer fridges. I opened the folder from my personal drive, buried under NDAs, non-competes, and a laughably outdated code of conduct. I found it. The hiring agreement. Page 13, subsection D, footnote 3. If the quarterly KPIs for division operations exceed 275% of forecast under the direct operational leadership of Garrison Wade, he shall be granted immediate and temporary strategic override privileges, including but not limited to voting presence in executive-level decisions pending board ratification. Signed, dated, stamped by Shane himself. I leaned back and stared at it. The clause was written back when no one thought we'd ever hit those numbers. It was a carrot, something to dangle and forget, meant to look generous without risk. Legal fluff for a Navy vet they never expected to outpace the models. And now, 285%. I printed the page on premium stock paper. Something about the weight made it feel ceremonial. Highlighted the clause in a thick line of neon yellow. Then again, just for the hell of it, placed it neatly in a folder with the Q3 performance report clipped behind it. I set the folder at the edge of my desk, perfectly aligned like a weapon waiting in its sheath. Next morning, I made 3 calls. Not loud ones, not dramatic. First, to internal legal, just to reconfirm clause validity. I spoke with Cassidy, the last person in that department who hadn't jumped ship under Preston's reign. Her voice dropped to a whisper when I read the clause aloud. "That's still in force?" she asked. "Yep," I said. "And the KPIs?" 285.4%. There was a pause, then a low whistle. "Well," she said, "you're going to need a bigger chair." Second call was to nobody. I just sat there. Let the silence sink its claws in, because this wasn't about rushing. This was about timing. Navy taught me that much. You don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. If I moved too fast, it would look petty, vindictive. But if I let Preston climb just a little higher, let him plan just one more humiliating town hall or butcher one more policy with his startup energy, then the fall would sting more. Not because I hated him, but because I needed the company to remember who built the damn ladder in the first place. The Monday after bonus day felt like the air had been sucked out of the building and replaced with carbonated dread. No more laughter in the break room, no passive-aggressive ping-pong matches, just silent keyboards and the occasional cough, like everyone had collectively swallowed their pride in a mouthful of glass. That morning, I asked Donovan from IT if he wanted to grab coffee before the weekly sync. He said sure, but glanced over his shoulder like I'd asked him to help rob a bank. We went to the cafe across the street, neutral turf. I ordered as usual. For him, black, 2 sugars. He thanked me but didn't take off his coat. "So," I said, watching him fidget with the sleeve, "how are you feeling about last week?" He shrugged. "I mean, sucks. We worked our asses off. But, you know, new leadership, new standards, right?" That wasn't Donovan talking. That was fear. Conditioned corporate fear. The kind that seeps in when you realize doing good work no longer protects you. "Just remember," I said, sipping my latte, "when someone hands you a knife and tells you to cut costs, check which end you're holding." Donovan didn't respond, but he didn't defend Preston either. That told me enough. I did 5 more coffees that week. Paige from marketing was furious. She'd already bought a plane ticket home for the holidays expecting her bonus. She was the only one who flat out said it. If that smug little jackass says, "Let's pivot one more time," I'm going to pivot him into the window. But others were more cautious. Some just blinked a lot. One even said, "Well, at least Preston's trying new things." New things. Like disemboweling morale with a butter knife, right? Then late Wednesday, a Slack message popped up on my screen from Whitney. No message, just a file. Screenshot. Private channel. Channel name. Nepo Squad. Thread title. Old Guard equals dead weight. In it, Preston was waxing poetic about his vision. He said he was gutting legacy friction and disrupting senior bottlenecks. Then, casually, "The bonus freeze is a necessary shock to the system. If they leave, they weren't meant to stay. If they leave. If we leave." I didn't even feel angry at first. Just hollow. Like watching someone bulldoze a house they've never lived in, then act surprised when the roof collapses on them. Preston wasn't trying to lead. He was trying to erase. He wanted to turn the company into a mirror, one that only reflected his ideas, his language, his friends, his damn haircut. And for a second, I hesitated. I'm not proud of it, but I'd spent 15 years here. This place wasn't just a job. It was the structure around which I'd built my life, my routines, my confidence, my identity. And now this toddler in designer socks was rewriting the DNA. But then I remembered something from my Navy days. We had this saying, "The ship doesn't belong to the captain. The captain belongs to the ship." Preston thought he owned the vessel, but vessels outlast captains, always. I stared at the folder on my desk, the one with the clause. Then I opened my laptop and started digging. If Preston wanted to play with consultants and contractors, I'd give him an audit he'd never forget. First invoice that made my eyelid twitch, $47,000 for strategic inspiration sessions, X3, submitted by Lance Anderson Solutions. Lance, the thought architect from Preston's dorm, who once spent an entire off-site retreat explaining how synergy is a spiritual state. The description line read, "Cross-functional unblocking, culture realignment, ideation, and proactive imagination scaffolding." Translation, he talked in circles for 3 hours and billed us more than our entire Q3 team building budget. And he wasn't the only one. There was a $38,000 charge for mindset recalibration, $29,000 for brand detox, and a bizarre $12,600 line labeled liquid brainstorming enhancement, which, as it turned out, was kombucha. I didn't get angry. I built a spreadsheet. Every padded invoice, every questionable retainer, every sudden vendor switch, Preston greenlit without so much as an RFP. I documented, cross-referenced, and flagged discrepancies in red. By the time I was done, it looked less like a financial report and more like a crime scene. Total waste in 6 months, $186,000. For a company that just canceled bonuses to raise the bar. Then I did what any good logistics officer would do. I planned the operation. That night I sent out an Outlook invite. Q3. Performance debrief. Strategic stakeholder review. Invitees: Preston, his inner circle, department heads, finance, and Shane looped in via video under the polite excuse of reviewing long-term incentives. Subject line neutral, agenda vague. I needed them all in one room. I needed him smug, comfortable, standing on a foundation he thought he'd built himself. Because when you pull the rug, you want the fall to echo. But more than that, I needed the witnesses. This wasn't just about me or my team's stolen bonus. This was about something bigger. Culture, legacy, respect. If Preston won, it wouldn't just be my name they'd forget. It would be every single person who came before him, who kept this company upright through recessions, layoffs, pandemics, and boardroom tantrums. So I prepped. I reviewed every chart, every KPI, practiced my slides like they were testimony in front of a jury. And when I clicked send on that calendar invite, I didn't smile. I just breathed. Because the meeting wasn't a debrief, it was a reckoning. Preston swaggered into the glass conference room 5 minutes late, like punctuality was beneath him. Aviator sunglasses still tucked into the front of his collar. Smile too wide, too polished. That manufactured kind of confidence you only get when you've never had to bleed for a win. Garrison? He nodded, slipping into the seat across from mine like we were on a first date, and he already knew I'd say yes. Let's keep it tight, yeah? Busy day. Other department heads trickled in, Paige looking exhausted but alert. Brock from finance clutching his tablet like a lifeline. Whitney with that silent, fire-eyed look that said, I saw the Slack thread and I haven't forgotten. And in the center of the table, the screen blank, waiting. Shane joined via video call, his face small in the corner tile, still frail, still recovering, but with a jawline that only tensed when he was expecting fallout. He looked tired, but he was watching. Preston leaned back, arms folded. All right, let's talk numbers. Hit me. I didn't respond right away. Just clicked the remote. Slide 1. Revenue trends. Q1 through Q3. Clear trajectory. Clean lines. Explosive growth in the last 90 days. Click. Slide 2. Client acquisition by quarter. I highlighted the Fortune 100 account. Estimated expansion value for Q4. 4.7 million. Click. Slide 3. Retention rates. Employee engagement. Pipeline velocity. Conversion improvement. Each slide slower than the last. I didn't race through it. I let it breathe, like a performance. A quiet dismantling. Preston started fidgeting by slide 4. He didn't like being sidelined, especially not in a room full of people he expected to worship him. I mean, look, he finally said, cutting in with a laugh that didn't quite stick the landing. No one's denying the numbers. And I love the enthusiasm, seriously. But let's not pretend this isn't the result of strategic repositioning from leadership. His little circle of yes-men chuckled, nervously, but they didn't echo him. Not this time, because facts are funny that way. Once they're in the room, they tend to suck the air out of opinions. Click. Slide 5. A table with forecast versus actuals. Projected goal, $2.2 million. Final, $6.3 million. Bottom cell lit up in bold red font, 285.4% over target. Preston's jaw twitched. I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. The realization that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as smart as his MBA told him he was. I looked at him then. Really looked at him. The polish was still there, but the sheen had cracks now. His voice was ready with another quip, but his eyes darted to Shane's tile. Still silent, still watching. I'm walking us through this, I said calmly, because context matters, strategy matters, and credit definitely matters. Click. Final slide. White background, black text, no graphs, no color, just the scanned copy of my hiring agreement, highlighted in neon yellow. The clause. If the quarterly KPIs for division operations exceed 275% of forecast under the direct operational leadership of Garrison Wade, he shall be granted immediate and temporary strategic override privileges. I didn't raise my voice, didn't flinch. The threshold was 275%, I said. We hit 285.4%. Clause is activated. The strategic override is now in effect. Shane's original signature is at the bottom of the page. Dated, validated, unexpired. Silence. Preston stared at the screen like he couldn't read. One of his guys, Trent the podcasting idiot, leaned over to whisper something, but Preston waved him off. Paige smirked. Brock looked like he just witnessed a car crash and wasn't sure whether to cheer or take notes. Shane cleared his throat. Preston, he said, voice calm, thin, but hard in a way that carried weight. Son, turn off your screen now. Preston blinked. What? Turn it off. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because the clause wasn't just a footnote. It was a knife. Legal, surgical, perfectly timed. And I had just buried it in the heart of his credibility in front of every executive he had left. I didn't move, didn't gloat. Because I wasn't done yet. Before we proceed, I said, opening the financial folder, I think everyone should see where our budget actually went during Preston's leadership transition. Click. New slide. Consultant expenditure analysis, 6-month period. The room got quieter, if that was possible. $47,000 for strategic inspiration sessions, $38,000 for mindset recalibration, $29,000 for brand detox, $12,600 for liquid brainstorming enhancement, which, by the way, was kombucha. Total unauthorized consultant spending, $186,000. I let that sink in. That's more than our entire annual training budget, spent in 6 months. On vendors who had one thing in common. They were all Preston's fraternity brothers or podcast guests. Shane's face didn't change, but I saw his knuckles tighten. Preston looked like someone had just told him Santa Claus was a tax write-off. The clause is clear, I continued. Strategic override includes personnel and budget authority. Effective immediately, all consultant contracts are under review. All hiring freezes are lifted for core operations positions, and Q3 bonuses will be distributed as originally planned. Preston finally found his voice. You can't just... Actually, I can. I slid a copy of the legal review across the table. Cassidy from legal confirmed it this morning. The clause supersedes standard hierarchy during the override period. Shane leaned forward on the video call. Preston, you need to leave the meeting now. Uncle Shane, this is... now. The door closed behind Preston with the softest click I've ever heard, but it felt louder than any tantrum he could have thrown. He hadn't even been escorted by security, just 2 internal HR reps and a freshly printed packet labeled Transition Review. Nobody said a word for a long time. It wasn't a celebration. There were no high fives, no slow claps, just the low hum of fluorescent lights and the lingering smell of burnt coffee from Preston's untouched mug. Then Paige cleared her throat. So what now? Eyes turned to me. I didn't reach for the head seat, didn't slide over Preston's abandoned laptop or grab the floor like I was staging a coup. I just leaned forward, folded my hands on the table, and said, we focus on Q4. No drama, no distractions, just results. Shane hadn't hung up yet. He was still watching, listening. Garrison, he said, the board's prepared to offer you interim executive authority, operational lead until we finalize direction. Thank you, I said, but I don't need the title. I just need room to fix what got broken. The rest happened methodically, like a good supply chain operation. Brooke and Cody were back by the end of the week. The consultant contracts were terminated within 10 days, some with cause, which meant no severance. The team started smiling again during meetings. Preston? He tried to fight it at first, hired his own lawyer, threatened to sue for wrongful termination. But when the board saw the financial audit and compared it to our Q3 performance, they offered him a generous severance package in exchange for a very comprehensive NDA. 3 months later, I got a call from a merger prospect, Hartwell Industries, based out of Dallas. They'd been watching our turnaround. We're interested in acquisition, their CEO said. But we have one condition. We want Garrison Wade's team running the Combined Operations Division. By spring, the deal was done. Not as a buyout, but as a true merger. I became VP of Operations for the combined entity. Shane stayed on as Chairman Emeritus. And Preston? Last I heard, he was in Austin running a cryptocurrency startup focused on disrupting the disruption economy. His LinkedIn still lists him as Chief Visionary Officer at something called Synergy Blockchain Solutions. I'm sure he's doing great. Me? I'm exactly where I belong. Running the show, protecting my people, and making sure the next guy who thinks experience doesn't matter learns otherwise. The funny thing is, I still have that old contract in my desk drawer, not as a weapon anymore, as a reminder, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't make noise. It's know exactly when to speak up, exactly what to say, and exactly who needs to hear it. Some battles you win with volume, others you win with patience. And if you're really good, really lucky, you win with both. And the knowledge that 15 years of showing up, doing the work, and taking care of your team can beat all the Harvard MBAs and startup energy in the world. The ship belongs to the crew, always has. The smart captains just figure that out before they get thrown overboard.